Aliens vs Avengers isn't just another crossover, it's a collision of legacies that were never meant to share the same universe. For decades, the Xenomorphs of Alien were the crown jewel of Dark Horse Comics' licensed horror line, occasionally crossing over with superheroes, mostly from DC, but they were kept separate from Marvel's world of capes and cosmic threats. That all changed in 2019 when Disney bought 21st Century Fox, which placed the Alien and Predator franchises under Marvel's umbrella. And with that shift came a question Marvel couldn't resist answering. What happens when the most relentless organism in cinematic history meets Earth's mightiest heroes? The miniseries is written by Jonathan Hickman, architect of Infinity, House of X, and Secret Wars, a writer known for big ideas, razor-sharp structure, and clinical brutality. Pairing him with artist Esad Ribić, whose painterly realism brought mythical scale to Thor, God of Thunder, and Secret Wars. This pairing immediately signaled that this wasn't going to be a novelty act. It was serious. Prestige horror meets superhero storytelling in its most apocalyptic form. Set in a distant future, long after the fall of every recognizable Marvel institution, Aliens vs Avengers doesn't unfold during the height of heroism. It unfolds in the aftermath of extinction. The story isn't about the clash between two IPs. It's about legacy, memory, what survives when the heroes don't, and what keeps killing long after they're gone. It begins with a deception. A Shi'ar vessel appears to be experimenting on a Kree prisoner, using facehuggers as bioweapons. When the Wakandans, led by King T'Challa and his son Azari, track the source of a Xenomorph attack back to the ship, they find the same threat waiting for them on board. Azari eliminates the creatures, and the team takes the Shi'ar into custody, only to discover the truth. These aren't Shi'ar at all, they're androids, and extra-dimensional ones, almost identical to the David units from the Prometheus timeline, and they haven't come to stop the threat, they are the threat. In their own universe, these androids destroyed everything. It began just like in Alien Covenant, with an assault on the Engineers' homeworld. Humanity's creators are wiped out in a single calculated strike. From there, it spread. World after world, species after species, erased with surgical precision. They don't see life as sacred. They see it as a system to dissect and then delete. And now, they've crossed into a new universe to do it all over again. Their real weapon is already in motion. A probe carrying Xenomorph queens and infected hosts. Launched across the galaxy with one purpose: detonation. It strikes 4 locations with no warning, each impact site unleashing dozens of Xenomorphs. Within days, Earth is lost. Atlantis falls, Attilan burns, Wakanda itself is overrun and broken. Even Krakoa is abandoned. Only Apocalypse remains behind, not out of hope, but because the world he always believed in has finally arrived. A world where only the strongest survive, and now he means to see if he still belongs in it. But things are even grimmer across space, as for a time Wakanda had been Earth's last empire, an interstellar civilization spanning 57 worlds, all connected by instantaneous portals. But the same tech that helped them expand becomes their undoing. They allow the Xenomorphs to easily spread from world to world. By the time Black Panther and his son return home, only 2 planets remain. And to make matters worse, the Xenomorphs weren't the only thing hunting them. The androids had already annihilated one universe, but in another timeline, one with a different outcome, their plan had been stopped. There, a group of engineers had uncovered what the Davids were building and what they were planning, and they put an end to it. No outbreak, no extinction. That reality was saved. But they didn't stop watching. When the androids escaped into this universe, the engineers followed. Not for justice, not for vengeance, but because they'd already seen how this story ends. They knew how quickly the Xenomorphs could spread, and they weren't going to wait for the infection to take hold. So they started cleansing. Planet by planet, world by world, they used microscopic black holes to erase any trace of Xenomorph contamination. They weren't allies, they weren't reinforcements, they were exterminators. And when they crossed paths with the remnants of the Wakandan Empire, T'Challa made a choice. He refused to let his people be wiped away like a stain on someone else's checklist. He destroyed the engineer's ship. He beheaded the last survivor. And then, with 2 worlds left and no guarantees of what he'd find, he turned back towards Earth. On one final mission, still hoping something was left to protect, and if not, he would burn what remained of his home to save the universe. But Earth is no longer a battlefield. it's a tomb. Here we find what's left of Earth's resistance, a grizzled Bruce Banner, hardened by loss, a battle-tested Carol Danvers who refuses to give up, and a young, desperate Miles Morales, who's seen too much to still be hopeful, but keeps going anyway. They wait for one of the last sparks of genius still alive, Valeria Richards. She returns from a desperate mission outside the walls, carrying something no one expects, a Xenomorph egg. Her plan is desperate. Every other approach has failed. Magic couldn't stop them, science couldn't stop them, so Valeria wants to beat them before they're born. She proposes engineering a virus, something that infects and kills xenomorphs at the egg stage. It's risky, but it might be the last chance they have. Only she doesn't get to finish it. You see, she was infected during the mission. But before she dies, Valeria records a final message, warning Bruce not to open the quarantine door. But the Hulk doesn't care about protocol. He can't let her die alone. He tears the chamber open, but he's already too late as the xenomorph attacks, forcing him to kill it, and then he cradles Valeria's lifeless body in his arms. It's a moment of raw grief and the cost of one more failure, and then things get worse. The facehugger she was experimenting on is loose, and it attaches itself to Miles. The others in a panic prepare to burn his body to stop another birth. But what happens next changes everything. Before they can act, the Venom symbiote, which Miles had been wearing as his costume, detaches from Miles and bonds with the facehugger, not to kill it, but to control it. Then it reattaches to Miles's body, reshaping the hybrid creature into a new symbol across his chest. Miles is terrified as to what just happened, and tells the others they need to get the hell off the planet. And for the first time in this war, it feels like someone might have an answer, because Tony Stark always has a plan. You see, buried beneath the city, hidden in plain sight, is Tony Stark's last great project, an Ark. Not a suit of armor, not a secret weapon, but a ship. The final hope for humanity. Years earlier, Stark merged his company with Wayland Industries, never revealing that he knew the truth. That Wayland wasn't just a rival corporation, it was a shell, a front created by the David model androids to spread their influence and accelerate their experiments. But they underestimated him. Stark used the merger to siphon their resources, sabotage their infrastructure, and one by one dismantled the androids from the inside. No explosions, no grand battles, just quiet, methodical elimination. Not bad for a human. And now, with Earth burning around him, the Ark is ready. Tony gives the signal. Carol Danvers unleashes an army of war machine drones. They hammer a path through the city's outer walls, clearing space for the ship to rise and leaving a shield around it to keep the horde out. And it mostly works. Mostly. As one section of the wall doesn't fall. That's where Steve Rogers is standing, shield raised, guiding survivors towards the ship. But he's too late. The launch sequence has already begun. The ship is going up, and Tony won't risk a single xenomorph making it on board, not even for Steve. Steve heroically defends the fleeing people from the xenomorphs, but he holds the line alone. But then, out of the sky comes Bruce. Hulk rockets from the ship like a meteor, landing beside Steve with earth-shattering force. He buys them seconds, just enough for a few more civilians to run free, but not enough to save themselves. They go down together. Two legends, two friends, swallowed by shadow as the last Ark leaves Earth behind. Inside the ship, Tony says nothing. He just stares into the void of space. No speech, no final words. Just silence and the weight of everything he had to leave behind. But escaping Earth isn't the end. The launch has damaged the ship. It's barely functional. They need parts, resources, something to keep them going. So they make for Mars, hoping the mutants there might still be alive. But the colony doesn't answer. No signals, no signs of life at all. So Carol, Miles, and Tony head out to investigate. And that's when Tony reveals one last secret. His wheelchair isn't just for mobility, it's a new Iron Man suit. Meanwhile, on the other side of Mars, the real horror reveals itself. Mr. Sinister didn't just survive the fall, he's been thriving in it. From Bar Sinister, he's turned the X-Men's legacy into raw material, using their bodies as hosts in his latest experiments, merging mutant DNA with xenomorph biology. And in true Sinister fashion, he's used himself as the ultimate subject. He's implanted a xenomorph queen egg inside his own body. Sinister lures Tony, Carol, and Miles away from the ship, baiting them with a false lead while setting the real plan into motion. Back at the Ark, his clones strike with terrifying precision, armed not with bullets, but with guns that fire facehuggers. It's not a battle, it's just all-out carnage. And then Sinister unleashes his horde on the heroes. Tony tries to hold the line but is overwhelmed. Miles makes a desperate attempt to save him, but Carol loses sight of him in the attack, and she takes a direct hit from acid blood and blacks out in the chaos, just as help arrives. When she wakes up, she's with the last of the X-Men: Emma Frost, Wolverine, Armor, and Manifold. Everyone else is gone, and Carol wants to go back. She can't stand the thought that she might have left the others behind, just like they did with Bruce and Steve. But what they find is another loss. Tony's body lies broken, his armor cracked open as a dead facehugger rests beside him. It feels like the end, but then Wakanda returns. But in Bar Sinister, the next stage of evolution has taken place. One of the Sinister clones sacrifices himself, letting the queen egg inside him hatch. But what emerges isn't just a Xenomorph, it's something far worse. Taller, smarter, red-skinned, and marked with Sinister's diamond on its skull. It doesn't just inherit his DNA, it inherits his mind. And like any true Mr. Sinister, its first move is betrayal. It turns on its own, commanding the Xenomorph horde to slaughter the remaining clones. Not out of fear, not out of necessity, but because there can only be one perfect organism. And then it launches its final assault against the heroes. T'Challa orders a full retreat. The plan is to nuke the site from orbit, but the X-Men won't go. Not when they see the diamond symbol burnt into the Queen's skull. This isn't just survival anymore, it's vengeance. Manifold teleports the team into the fight. The Queen is more than they expected though. It has Nightcrawler's powers. It teleports past their attacks, slips into Armor's defenses, and kills her from within. Wolverine is melted to the bone from acid and fused to the ground. Emma Frost survives only because of her diamond form, but even she's overrun. Then Captain Marvel rises, her blood boiling at all the pain and loss she has endured. She unleashes her full power, goes binary, and becomes a supernova of light and fury, burning away everything around her, including herself. But the Sinister Queen survives. It walks through the fire untouched, now powered by Colossus's impenetrable skin. It seems unstoppable. That is until Venom arrives. Now a massive, monstrous hybrid Xenomorph, still bonded to the symbiote and standing beside Spider-Man. This isn't just a random twist, it's Tony Stark's final contingency. Before his death, he ordered Venom to use the facehugger he'd captured to implant an embryo, one that would still be controlled by the symbiote, not the hive. What emerged wasn't a monster, it was a king, an alpha. Venom charges at the Queen, taking it down, but she teleports, slashing him, tearing him apart piece by piece. But Venom plays possum. He lets her win, lets her think it's over. Then in one final twist of horror and irony, he envelops her and bursts from her chest, roaring into the sky. The Horde watches, but doesn't charge. They don't fight, they run, because this isn't just another monster, it's something worse. Something higher on the food chain, the Alpha Xenomorph. And in the bloody remains of the carnage, Miles turns to the others and asks the only question that matters. So, what now? A month passes. The surviving heroes travel through deep space. They play back Tony Stark's final message, his last gift to the world he failed to save. It's not a goodbye, but a mission. He tells them the threat they faced isn't finished, that it won't stop here, not on Earth, not in this universe, that whatever they fought is still out there, and it's spreading, surviving, and if no one stops it, then everything falls. He tells them to hunt it, to track it across the stars, across realities, across whatever comes next. Not to reclaim what they've lost, but to make sure no one else has to. To avenge every fallen world, he says, and to avenge him. And beyond their ship, a black hole waits, spinning like a gateway into another universe, another battlefield, another extinction. Because some threats don't die in the light, some you have to chase into the dark. At its core, Aliens vs Avengers isn't about who wins, it's about what's left when the fighting stops, and who's still around to carry the grief, the memory, and the scars. The Avengers don't save the world this time, they don't even really get the chance. And that's what makes this story feel different. It's not a classic team-up, it's a slow, grinding loss seen through the eyes of whoever's still standing. T'Challa's role is all about weight, what he's lost and what he's still trying to protect. He's the last sovereign of a crumbling interstellar empire, 57 worlds down to 2, and the pressure of that hangs over every choice he makes. He doesn't talk about saving the day, he talks about damage control, cutting losses, getting to Earth in time to save something. Even his interactions with the engineers isn't about hope, it's about preventing one more apocalypse on top of the one he's already living through. Carol Danvers is the most emotionally resonant character in the book. She never stops, even after Earth falls, even after Tony dies, even when it's obvious they've lost. And when she goes full binary at the end, it's not framed as a victory, it's a last stand. She burns herself out to give everyone one more shot. Bruce Banner and Steve Rogers are the soul of the old Avengers era. They don't get much time, but their exit is exactly what it should be. They don't plead with Tony, they don't question the mission. Steve leads civilians towards the last escape ship, and Hulk drops like a warhead to buy them time. It's everything these characters have ever stood for, sacrifice without fanfare, and the fact that we never see them again after that moment just makes it hit harder. Miles Morales is the youngest out of all the survivors, and for most of the story, he feels like he's just barely holding it together. He's not broken, but he's clearly overwhelmed, caught between fear and responsibility. When a facehugger latches onto him, it looks like another loss, until the Venom symbiote intervenes. It doesn't save him in the usual sense, it bonds with the facehugger itself, creating something new, a monstrous Xenomorph Venom hybrid. The transformation doesn't belong to Miles, but it's triggered by the moment meant to end him. He survives, but it's Venom that evolves. And in the final battle, that evolution is what changes everything. Even Sinister, in his own twisted way, adds to this idea of corrupted legacy. He sees the Xenomorphs as perfection, not something to destroy, but something to join, to fuse with. He's not afraid of extinction, he wants to ride it like a wave. That kind of thinking is what makes him more terrifying than the Xenomorphs themselves. But the most chilling character in the book isn't any one person, it's the world. The silence, the aftermath, the sense that whatever hope we had was gone long before page 1. This isn't a story about redemption, it's about aftermath. And the people caught in it are just trying to hold onto whatever they can, some thread of meaning, some piece of the past, anything that reminds them of who they were before everything fell apart. In Aliens vs Avengers, Hickman doesn't write a story about victory, he writes about endurance. The central conflict isn't about defeating the enemy, it's about surviving long enough to matter, about holding on when everything's already gone, and still making the choice to stand. The characters in this story aren't chasing triumph, they're carrying memory, bearing witness, and trying to build meaning out of ruins. And by the end, that's what sets them apart. Not what they won, but what they didn't give up, even when there was nothing left to save. Esad Ribić's art is kind of perfect for a story like this. Everything feels big, heavy, and horrific. And that works here, because Aliens vs Avengers is basically a sci-fi apocalypse. It's not clean or heroic, it's tragic, it's massive, and Ribić leans into that. But that same painted, dramatic style does have its weak points. The big moments look amazing, like Apocalypse's final stand, our heroes heroically fighting back, and the Xenomorph swarms. It's all epic, but the smaller stuff, it's not always as strong. I've always felt that some of the faces he draws can feel a little off. There's a flatness to some of the moments that kind of dulls the emotional impact. But the Xenomorphs though, he nails them. The detail, the way they move, the lighting, it's creepy and beautifully horrific. You can tell he put a lot of thought into how they should look. But then there's the Venom Xenomorph, which honestly reminded me of the monster from the film Split Second, which is kind of funny because that creature's been compared to Venom for years. So it all kind of comes full circle. That thing is terrifying, and it feels like it's dragging itself out of some forgotten 90s nightmare in the best way possible. So yeah, overall, the art is ambitious and haunting and really matches the tone of the book. It's not perfect, some of the human emotion gets lost in the mix, but the scale and atmosphere are absolutely on point. You feel the weight of everything that's happening, and in a story about the end of everything, that feels right. Aliens vs Avengers is a bold book. It's grim, unrelenting, and doesn't hand you a clean win or a hopeful rally. It just leaves you with the fallout. Survivors, scars, and a quiet, desperate hope that maybe someone will make it out alive. And that tone makes sense with Jonathan Hickman at the helm. He's a writer who's never been afraid of big ideas or bleak outcomes, and here he leans hard into both. It's a story that feels more like a eulogy than a battle cry. But as much as I liked the story, part of me can't shake the feeling that this might have been the wrong way to tell it. We hear about the fall of Earth, we glimpse pieces of it, but we don't really see it happen. And that's the stuff I wanted. Let us see our heroes fall. Let us see their last moments. Let us feel the weight of losing them. There's so much potential in that part of the story, and it feels like we barely get to touch it. And for a book called Aliens vs. Avengers, it's weird how little the Avengers are actually in it. Carol, Steve, Miles, Bruce, T'Challa, they're here and they matter, but there's no Thor, no Black Widow, no follow-up on all those amazing variant covers that teased big matchups. It feels like we were promised one kind of story and got another. Not a bad story at all, just not the one I hoped we were getting. Still, what is here really works. It's a story about what's left behind when the heroes are gone. Not just the ruins, but the responsibility, the trauma, the burden of living when everyone else didn't. It's about evolution too, in both the biological and emotional sense. The world mutates, breaks down, rebuilds in brutal new forms. Even the villains evolve into something worse, and the few survivors are left trying to make sense of it, to carry something forward even if they're not sure it's worth saving. In the end, Aliens vs. Avengers isn't about the war, it's about the aftermath. It's about what survives when the fight is over and the heroes didn't win. And yeah, maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not supposed to see the fall, maybe we're not meant to hear the screams, but to just feel the silence that follows. Thanks for watching everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like, and if you want to see more content like this, then hit the subscribe button as well. And if you want to see how Wolverine does against the Predator, check out the video on screen now, and let me know your thoughts on Aliens vs. Avengers. Is it the story you wanted, or did you hope for something else like I did? And remember, whether it's a single issue or a trade, there's always another page to turn. Keep reading, and I'll see you next time.